This evening we have as the first deputation a presentation by Dr. Myron Halleck. Our clerk has asked me to point out that Dr. Halleck is not with the Ontario Medical Association, but rather Dr. Halleck is with the OMA section of the Emergency Medicine Departments, if I'm correct. So I'd like to invite Dr. Halleck to come forward, please. Thank you, Doctor, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. May I start my presentation?
Certainly.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The OMA section on emergency medicine and the emergency physicians of Ontario are grateful for the opportunity to address you on the issues related to the changes in the emergency department of the Greater Niagara General Hospital. As chair of the section, I would be pleased to take your questions after my remarks. You should all have a copy of the section submission, which also included a critique of the Hay Group report by Dr. Kevin Spate, a former GNGH emergency physician, as well as a list of proposal items for reform from the GNGH emergency physicians dated August the 31st, 2009. We would like to begin our presentation by highlighting some of the key issues that the section has reviewed with respect to the GNGH emergency department. GNGH ED physician staffing levels. First of all, the section would like to review the issue of GNGH emergency physician staffing levels. Note that the Hay Group report made various comments on potential emergency physician workloads. In particular, the Hay Group noted, while there is no consensus as to the ideal workload in the American literature, in a hospital with a fast track and limited requirements for bedside teaching, estimates are, on average, a physician should see 4.3 patients per hour. The Hay Group noted 3 reviews, namely Murray, St. Paul's, and the Power 1 study, or the predictors of workload in the emergency room, Stage 1 study. The Hay Group indicated that emergency physicians in those particular reviews, working in salaried or hourly payment models, saw an average of 2.5 to 3 patients per hour. The section was unable to obtain any reference on the Murray review. The section did find the St. Paul study. The Hay Group failed to mention that the St. Paul study noted that, quote, the primary limitation of the study was that it was performed in one urban hospital with a relatively homogeneous group of physicians. Without further study and validation in other settings, the findings cannot be assumed to be generalizable, unquote. The St. Paul study also noted that, quote, the model derived in the study is one possible workload measurement tool that could be used to compare the relative productivity of 2 EDs or 2 emergency physicians. But because of ED patient arrival variability, it cannot be used as an ED staffing formula. Unfortunately, the Hay Group inappropriately used this study, as well as the Power 1 study, to derive an ED physician staffing formula for the GNGH ED, where physicians were working in an entirely different, non-teaching community hospital in a fee-for-service, non-salaried payment model. Fortunately, the large Power study had a second stage. It compared the productivity of emergency physicians from fee-for-service and alternate funding agreement, predominantly hourly rates, model of service. The Power study is likely the largest review of emergency physician workload ever done. The second stage examined 10 Ontario hospital-based emergency departments, and a research assistant observed second-by-second review of physician workload. The Power 2 study found that, on average, emergency physicians working in a pediatric AFA department saw 2.2 patients per hour, adult AFA departments saw 2.9 patients per hour, and adult fee-for-service community emergency departments saw 4.4 patients per hour. The GNGH ED physicians, according to Hay Group data, saw 4.75 patients per hour, or just over the observed Power 2 fee-for-service average. Please note that it is possible, if not likely, that the 6 full-time, very experienced emergency physicians who have practiced in the GNGH ED alone for a combined total of over 50 years are more productive than the group average in the fee-for-service department studied in Power 2. I'll let you look at that slide. Therefore, the emergency physician productivity at the GNGH emergency department prior to September the 15th, 2009 was essentially consistent with productivity levels directly observed and measured in a recent large multi-center prospective Ontario study involving peer group fee-for-service emergency departments. The position of the NHS reflected in the Council minutes of October 19th was, quote, physicians were working in excess of hours recommended by the ministry guidelines. This is incorrect. There are no such staffing guidelines. Departments are at times not able to fully staff, including hourly funded AFA departments, especially in underserviced areas and during holiday time periods. Also, the hours proposed in alternate funding agreement contracts are based on a department's prior year volumes and acuity and are maximum allotments of funded hours. The minimum is usually 40% of this number, or at least 24 hours of coverage. Furthermore, the position of the NHS, as reflected in Council minutes on October the 19th, was the decision to go with the staffing model is based on a best practices study. This is also incorrect. There is no such best practice study on staffing models. Payment models and staffing models are not the same issue. The Hay Group has confused the two. Finally, the GNGH emergency physicians are paid the same way 3/4 of payments are made to Ontario physicians, on a fee-for-service basis. This payment model is fully acceptable and a standard method of physician compensation. I'm sorry, the top is cut off on your screen. In February of 2008, 1 year before the Hay Group began their review of the GNGH-ED, for no clearly defined reason, the NHS board noted that, quote, we have moved our three southern tier sites into an EDAFA arrangement and are now beginning a process to reconfigure our northern tier sites. These comments from the NHS board clearly indicate an intention to move a fully staffed fee-for-service department into a contracted EDAFA department. Physicians have the right to decide for themselves the payment model which they would like to accept. Both fee-for-service and AFA are acceptable models of payment under the Health Insurance Act. It is unfair and unacceptable for hospital administrators to impose one payment model on emergency physicians. GNGH-ED physician shifts. The GNGH-ED physicians worked 12-hour shifts on average. Dr. Spate has pointed out that studies have shown that 12-hour emergency physician shift lengths are not unusual or extraordinary. The full-time GNGH emergency physicians benefited from a regular, stable, auto-generating 10-day shift rotation for a total of 36.5 rotations per year. The shift allocation was fair, sustainable, and well accepted by the emergency physician group. The emergency physicians have pointed out that none of them suffered from burnout or significant absenteeism. Furthermore, the GNGH physicians recruited 2 new emergency physicians to cover for one physician's leave of absence, and they further agreed to further recruitment as required with their input. ED wait times. The majority of emergency department waiting for urgent and emergent patients is a result of waiting for an available inpatient bed. Furthermore, the primary cause of ED overcrowding is hospital overcrowding. These points, Your Worship, are clear. Dr. Dubinsky of the Hay Group and the NHS did not adequately point out the fact that emergency physician staffing, and more correctly, emergency physician productivity, is only one variable in determining emergency department wait times. The Hay Group and the NHS downplayed the fact that the GNGH had the shortest wait times in the NHS region. On the one hand, Dr. Dubinsky and the NHS argue that only regional averages matter, but they went on to present line graphs comparing the GNGH emergency department to provincial wait time averages only and not the aggregate times for all the NHS departments. Of course, all departments in the province, in varying degrees, are burdened with the warehousing of admitted patients in our emergency rooms due to a system-wide shortage of hospital and long-term care beds. It is important for the Council and public to understand that total department length of stay is measured from first patient encounter until a patient physically leaves the department. Furthermore, emergency physician response times are not measured at the GNGH and are not measured provincially. As we have seen, overall emergency physician productivity at the GNGH was high. In short, physician productivity was not likely the key variable that has seen increased wait times in the department. A shortage of hospital beds is the key culprit in this matter. Complaint levels. The NHS administration referenced an increasing number of patient complaints about wait times and treatment at the GNGH ER in a letter to your worship on September the 30th. Of note, the Hay Group did not review or analyze complaints or complaint levels in their review. The NHS presented a graph of absolute number of complaints at the GNGH versus other NHS sites. It did not specify or categorize the complaints. It did not specify whether the complaints were considered substantive or led to any department policy changes or negative patient outcomes. If most of the complaints had to do with wait times, we have already reviewed the major cause of wait times as a lack of available beds. There should be a full, competent, and independent review of the NHS complaint data for all sites with appropriate protection of patient confidentiality and physician opportunity for comment and feedback. Current ED physician coverage. As noted by Ms. Sevenpiper on October the 19th at this council, staffing at the GNGH at that time was composed of 1/3 by existing GNGH staff, 1/3 by cross-covering NHS emergency staff, 1/3 by Health Force Ontario staff. Note that the private temporary staffing agency on retainer by the NHS at significant regional cost is not listed as providing significant department coverage. Also, the resignation of 3 full-time ED staff and the leave of absence of a 4th have significantly reduced GNGH ED staff coverage of the department. The department is utilizing regional and tier chiefs to staff the department. The department is utilizing a large percentage of Health Force Ontario's contracted physicians who are all paid top-ups. The department has also introduced a significant and unprecedented top-up to all NHS emergency physicians who increased their usual hours of emergency department work in order to staff the GNGH. This is certainly not a best practice and will cost the region and public purse significantly over the ensuing months. Furthermore, the department is seeing regular and significant short notice gaps in coverage, which may prove to be very difficult to cover, especially during the holiday period. The Council would be well advised to ask the NHS to report on the additional costs and measures taken by the NHS, the LHIN, Health Force Ontario, and all other groups to keep the GNGH Emergency Department open and functioning. This Council may also wish to ask the NHS if the GNGH Emergency Department wait times and left without being seen patient numbers have increased since September the 15th of 2009. In its presentation to City Council on October the 19th, the NHS stated that it had a fiduciary responsibility to provide health care services. Furthermore, the NHS stated that there were bylaws in place that require NHS staff and physicians, by the way, who are not in fact hospital employees, to review any comments that they intend to make to the public or to elected public officials with the NHS beforehand. Dr. Dubinsky of the Hay Group confirmed that it is common for hospitals to have such rules in place. These statements do not justify the approach taken by the NHS on these issues. There must be an open and fair debate on issues affecting the healthcare services of a community. Physicians have the greatest fiduciary responsibility to their patients. These duties do not permit them to have any other conflicting duties. Therefore, physicians must not be restricted by hospital or medical staff bylaws by speaking out on matters affecting the interest of their patients. This is wrong as a matter of policy and law. It is also inconsistent with the appearance of fairness. By discouraging full and fair debate and by acting unilaterally, the NHS has not fulfilled its responsibilities to its patients and to the community. The NHS administration's reasons for hiring the Hay Group to review only the GNGH Emergency Department, and especially its emergency physician group, was never made clear. A number of events give rise to an appearance of a lack of clarity and transparency. The Hay Group's mandate and terms of reference were not presented. The GNGH ED physicians were given only a few hours of advance notice before their review began. The Hay Group review commenced while the GNGH ED site chief was on vacation. Dr. Kevin Spate prepared a critique of the Hay Group report, but it was never posted on the NHS website in order for the NHS staff, physicians, and the public to review an emergency physician's concerns about the report. In short, the Hay Group report lacked objectivity and transparency. Details expected in an expert report are lacking. Please see our section's written comments for further review. Summary. In summary, the GNGH emergency physicians were providing full-service emergency care to the Niagara Falls community for decades. The GNGH emergency physicians were very productive and provided unique skills and dedication to the department. The NHS assumption of scheduling control of a stable, fully staffed emergency department is unprecedented. Community service recognition. The 6 GNGH emergency physicians combined have provided over 50 years of dedicated full-time service to Niagara Falls. They should be recognized for their distinguished contributions to the community. The section and the Emergency Physicians of Ontario would encourage the community to make these recommendations to Council. Finally, we would like to discuss the Public Hospitals Act. The NHS administration is currently being sanctioned by the Ontario Nursing Association. Also, the NHS administration has suffered a majority full vote of non-confidence by its Medical Staff Association. Furthermore, NHS board members have expressed fear of losing their position should they speak out against NHS board policies. Thus, the NHS does not enjoy the support of its own physicians and nurses. Its actions surrounding the GNGH emergency department will, in our view, lead to further professional and public non-confidence levels in the NHS. One potential solution may be the provincial cabinet appointment of an investigator. Not a full judicial investigation, but a focused inquiry as provided for by Section 8.1 of the Ontario Hospital Act. There would be a need for the appointment of an independent investigator, such as a retired judge, with the input of City Council. The investigator should also be directed to hear submissions from members of the public. This may be the best solution for the community and the medical profession to reestablish its trust in the leadership of the Niagara Health System. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halleck. I just wanted to note before we proceeded, I thank you for your presentation and coming this evening and your request to be here. I wanted to note that our Member of Provincial Parliament, Mr. Kim Crater, is here as well, and I welcome Kim to the meeting. He did advise that he would join us tonight, so I hope that he's making some notes as well. And I wanted to open up the opportunity for our members of council to ask you questions, if you don't mind. So the first request I have is from Councillor Iannone.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. I understand you were here the evening that the NHS was here, and I was really glad to hear that. I want to say that once we received your letter requesting to speak at council, we did have a response from the NHS, and you told me you didn't get a copy of that response, so I'll just highlight it, and I'd like to read this because... Did he get a copy?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'd like to let the public know that this was the letter that we received from the NHS, and basically it says it thanks us for the opportunity to speak at council. Their attendance was a signal that we have an opening dialogue and enhanced collaboration with a common goal, improving access into the quality of healthcare services at GNGH, and particularly the site here, and working with the NHS. And we took that approach because, quite frankly, we are really sick and tired of butting heads with them. I mean, Ms. Seven Pfeiffer stood there and I think half a dozen times stated that GNGH has some of the best doctors and nurses that you can find. And I think my problem with her comment that evening was, well, if they're the best, why aren't you listening to them? And Councillor Pietrangelo followed that up with asking her, you know, they believe you just have an attitude with them and you're not listening. Well, they're not listening. And I don't understand the hypocrisy of we have the best, but we're not going to follow our own doctor's recommendations. But basically it says that it's regrettable that we're having you here and putting your position forward. And it says, it's regrettable that the focus of discussion for the OMA section on emergency medicine continues to be on the past and physicians who have chosen for their own reasons to leave the NHS as we implement changes to improve quality of patient care, including more physician coverage and other initiatives at the GNGH to better serve patients. Because the OMA section on emergency medicine has not contacted the NHS directly for dialogue or clarification on the issues, we have contacted them to request an opportunity to meet and ensure that they have the accurate facts. And I read that as, well, council can listen to them, but we're not changing our mind on anything. Really, we don't want you to hear them, and we really don't want the residents to hear them. But if you do, it's a waste of your time because we aren't changing the path that we're on. And really, it was done really politely and wrapped in a nice package. But basically what they said to us is, we are going forward with everything that we have in the HIP, and I know you don't want to talk on the HIP, and we've done that ad nauseum. But basically, it's our way or the highway in regards to the NHS. And that's what I took from that meeting. Thank you for trying to do it nicely. But basically they've said everything our anti-HIP committee has done, all the information we've put forward is for naught because they're going forward on the path that they've chosen to take. And what I thought was most important in your presentation to us was when you highlighted the reasons the emergency physicians said they were suffering burnout. It wasn't for the number of patients that they were seeing. It was the over and over and over dealings with the administration, the NHS, and the NHS's ability to listen to the physicians practicing medicine in the emerge. I found that to be the most telling portion of your letter to us, and quite frankly, why I thought you needed to be here. Because she didn't stand there, Ms. Sevenpfeifer, I shouldn't call her she. Ms. Sevenpfeifer didn't stand there, and neither did Dr. Dubinsky, saying, oh, by the way, when we asked that question, they highlighted burned out of emerge doctors, quality of life issues, high rates of doctors leaving, when all those things are because they're so sick and tired of dealing with the NHS administration, and they just wanted to get back to patient care, that God forbid she tell us that, because that kind of blows their whole Dubinsky report and the Hay report out of the water.
So, Councillor, if I may just interrupt, I was asking for questions. I'd be glad to give you time, but would you like to ask a question? And we'll
no,
ask?
Actually, Mr. Mayor,
you have a question?
You used to say questions and comments.
No, I just said questions, but I'd like the doctor standing on his feet. But if there's other questions, certainly you can make some comments later. But please pose a question if you would.
No, I'm not going to pose a question.
Excuse me?
I'm going to do is the doctor asked counsel.
Excuse me. We have respect from the council. We'd like to be asking questions of the doctor at this point. You're welcome to make some statements later. This is a question
actually, I was
period.
going to put a motion on the floor if you don't mind.
I don't mind. That's fine.
Oh, well,
but there may be others who would like to speak as well.
Well, I'm sure they will.
Okay.
I mean, that's what don't you speak to a motion?
Point of order. We need a motion to permit the conversation to continue.
Sure.
This is a serious matter, and we want to deal with it. I would move that you continue with your comments and end with your motion.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Any further discussion or comment? Having seen none, all those in favour, please raise your hands.
Seriously,
carried.
we
Thank
had
you.
to have a motion of council for a councillor to continue their comments.
Councillor, we just asked for questions. We'd like to have some order, please, because the doctor's standing.
I just got permission by my counsel to continue.
Right. The doctor's standing on his feet, so please understand that.
We know your position. Anyway, through Dr. Malik's presentation to us, he basically had asked council to look at appointing an independent investigator. Most of council who I was able to get a hold of today, I let them know that I would be putting a resolution on the floor. That's what I'm going to do now because they just gave me permission to do so. And we can work from that motion. Here's my resolution. Whereas the NHS is currently being sanctioned by the Ontario Nurses Association, and whereas the NHS administration has suffered a supermajority full vote of non-confidence by its Medical Staff Association, and whereas the actions surrounding the GNGH ER department has led to the exodus of a number of long-term doctors, and whereas the NHS is entering yet another year of massive debt, leading to the reduction of essential services such as maternity and pediatrics for the residents of Niagara Falls, and whereas the OMA section on emergency medicine and the Emergency Physicians of Ontario has provided a review of the GNGH emergency department and determined that the Niagara Falls community is unlikely to see stable emergency physician staffing for years to come with continuous risk of imminent department closure, the City Council of Niagara Falls hereby requests the province step in and appoint an independent provincially appointed supervisor to oversee and look into the NHS administration as it has similarly done in other communities such as Blue Water Hospital in Sarnia. And I'd like that recorded.
Okay, we have a second to the motion. Councillor Thompson. Any comments on the motion? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. I also don't have any questions, but I want to stand up and thank you for being here and reconfirming all of the things we've been saying for months, and the comments that you've made tonight just reconfirm all of the things that this council has been concerned about. The accountability, the communication from the NHS, the staffing levels, which are in question here tonight, the unbelievable rules that restrict medical people from having input and nurses' input into such an important and sensitive topic in this community. So I just think that we're on the right track. I think the motion is appropriate so that we can step back as a council. We suggested the last time when the NHS was here that we try to work together and eliminate some of our differences and have this communication and dialogue, but that doesn't seem to happen, and in fact we probably wouldn't have heard again unless your visit here tonight stimulated another email. So thank you for coming, and let's get on and see if we can help resolve this problem through a provincial investigator.
Thank you. Other members of council? Yes, Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Worship. Excuse me. Thank you, Dr. Halleck, for being here tonight. My question is, and I'm trying to make sense of what has happened, and I know there's always underlying reasons for things, and I'm trying to figure out, in your opinion, can you shed some light on to, again, in your opinion, why the NHS decided to restructure the GNGH ED? I'm just wondering, because if what I heard in your presentation, it wasn't broken, then why would they go about changing it or dismantling it? And I'm just wondering if you could give us any opinion on that.
Doctor?
Again, I'd have a hard time commenting on that. I don't know what the motives of the NHS were, the steps that they took, the fact that they retained a private temporary staffing agency, the fact that they have been using Health Force Ontario. I mean, if they had a plan to change or overthrow, then they actually needed to have all the physicians ready to fully staff the department. Now they're scrambling to staff the department, and the community will suffer. And that's very unfortunate. That's the bottom line. The community will suffer because of the actions taken by the NHS.
Okay. Anybody else that wishes to answer a question? Councillor Inoue.
Thank you. One other thing. Councillor Wing and MPP Crater and I did a tour with the NHS the night before, and it was overseen by an emerged doctor who did the tour with us. And quite frankly, ad nauseum, they didn't want to use the word, but it was all about the M word, and it was done in quotations every time. And finally, I'm hardly shy, and I said, "Are you talking about money?" And basically, it was, this is all about money. And I couldn't see that. I mean, I've done my homework. Can you comment on that? I'm assuming you are not being paid to be here, that your being here is about patient care, not about money. And can you work that around the argument that the emerged docs were complaining that it's all about money? Because we didn't get that, but we got that message from them loud and clear.
I don't believe that the GNGH emergency physicians had any complaint about money with the hospital. The GNGH emergency physicians are being paid, were being paid on a fee-for-service basis, the same as 3/4 of Ontario doctors are. The same as if you go to see your family doctor, he will make a bill to the Ministry of Health for the service that was provided. Yes, there is an AFA option, but the doctors at this institution have chosen not to proceed with that option, as other departments in this region have. The question about money, I mean, we've talked about it in our submission. Ontario physicians are paid on average 63% less than physicians, emergency physicians, working in Saskatchewan, BC, and Alberta. 63% less. So can you imagine a police officer wanting to work in Toronto if you can make more in Vancouver or Calgary? So the issue of money, we can talk ad nauseum. In fact, we're probably the experts on the issues of compensation. Our job really is to represent our 2,000 members, our nearly 2,000 members, emergency physicians. And when we see a wrong, we try to help, we try to right that wrong. That's why I'm here standing in front of you today.
Thank you. Dr. Halleck, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you as well. So I just wondered, first of all, we do have our MPP here, and we have an opportunity for him to listen to what you have to say. And at this point, I'm wondering if you've had an opportunity for you to make a presentation to him at all?
No, if requested, we don't mind presenting to Mr. Crater. I don't mind.
And
we
secondly,
actually did. I'd like to point out the fact that we did receive a letter through NHS's legal counsel, and in our reply to that letter on October the 7th, we stated that we would be very happy to meet with the NHS administration in public forum to debate these issues. I'd like that to stand on the record. We're very happy to debate them in public, open forum.
That was my next question, whether you met with the NHS or the LIN in respect to that.
We have communicated them because they initiated communication through their Bay Street law firm. We were forced to retain legal counsel to reply to them, and in our letters to them, we said we are happy to engage them in open forum.
Yeah, I don't think any members of council are privy to that correspondence. Obviously, we're not included, but it would be a matter, an internal matter. I just would ask that question. And how about in respect of the concern, we all certainly want better health care, and I have a question. When the explanation was given to us by the NHS that they wanted to increase the staffing capacity, we were concerned about wait times. Obviously, we have people who experiencing it. We've had members of council express concerns. And I asked the question with respect to you as a professional and providing care to us as patients and those in our residents in the city. When we add more docs, is that going to reduce wait time? We understand, as you said, globally there's an issue, and I know that having done a review of nursing care from birth to death back in the 80s, that problem existed then and it still exists today with the warehousing issue that we're having with people not being able to move through the system fast enough. But when we try to increase the numbers of practitioners or emergency doctors, is that a benefit or a hindrance in respect of the reduction of wait times?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. First, the issue of warehousing. The issue of warehousing is actually at unprecedented levels still. The ministry, to be fair, is taking steps by recognizing that there is a provincial ED wait time strategy, and that is a step in the positive direction, most definitely. The problem is patients are still warehoused in emergency rooms. And it doesn't matter whether you have 3 physicians staffing a particular department,
right,
when there's bed block, or we call it gridlock,
sure,
or 1 or 2. It makes no difference. As we have seen, the GNGH physicians were very productive, seeing a higher number than average of the salaried or hourly model physicians that were presented by the Hay Group. So, yeah, you need to have a fine balance. Each payment model is not actually a staffing model. You could have an AFA department with many, many hours of staffing, but if you can't staff them, what can you do? I would grab the most experienced full-time physicians I could and staff my department first and foremost. Number of hours is not as important as overall productivity and department efficiency.
And we understand from what you just said that the cost of the staffing of the ED is certainly not necessarily the local NHS, but certainly through the ministry. And understanding that, we'd like to have the best health care we can get. So we're assuming that more bodies in ED will help. And I understand the warehousing issue, and that's why I conceded the point and wanted to say to you that we would favor more doctors. Obviously, it's going to help reduce wait times. And we're looking for the answers as you are. So we're just as frustrated looking at the situation that you're in. Obviously, something has to be done, and we're the recipients of your service in respect of what you do and you treat us at emergency departments. So the answer may not be that simple, but I still want to get to the point about the additional personnel. Is that beneficial? Is that something we should be, as a council, pushing for?
The NHS has come out and said, I believe, even in press articles, that they are striving to replace the 6 full-time emergency physicians with 14 full-time emergency physicians. I'll be honest, and I believe the section will be honest with you, that expectation is very unrealistic. There is a shortage of emergency physicians. I'll be honest with you that emergency physicians are leaving the field of practice, to either go to other fields of practice because of the fact that, unfortunately, for a great period of time, emergency medicine has been neglected. I'm hoping the winds will change and that will not be the case in the future, but that is a problem. You know, you can say maybe it'd be better to have 20 doctors in the emergency room versus 7 or 8, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to decreased wait times. I would also point out that the other departments in your region have higher staffing levels and higher left without being seen rates and higher wait times, and they have higher staffing levels.
And you can well appreciate that we wouldn't normally be privy to this information, and all we experience is the wait time in the ER. And when we get complaints from our fellow residents and citizens, we don't know the circumstance that the practitioner has to face or the doctor has to face in the emergency department that particular occasion. So we do pass those concerns on a regular basis. So I think the concern we have is to get the best health care we can. And you can well appreciate that while we're not practitioners, we're not in the system, we're hearing cases of concern expressed to us by people who've been through the system. And I think we want to improve on that. So that's why I asked the question with regard to personnel.
We understand, and the ministry, along with the OMA and the OHA, in 2006 released a major study on wait times, and that was their conclusion. The main overarching problem causing wait times is a lack of beds. That is the main overriding cause, and it hasn't changed since 2006.
And that's a global problem, as you acknowledge. The other question I have then, and the final one for you, is that we have the OMA. Is the OMA sanctioning your position? Have they made any approach to?
We are the OMA. I want to be very clear. We are the OMA section on emergency medicine.
Right.
We represent about 2,000 members that are voluntary members of the section, as well as the Emergency Physicians of Ontario. We do not represent the OMA Board of Directors.
Would they sanction your position at all? Or have you asked them
This
to do
has
that?
been a section issue. We have not had the opportunity to, if the OMA would want to get involved, they could. Absolutely. Absolutely. We would invite that.
And would they normally?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Inoue.
Thank you. Would you normally get involved in something like this? Like, how many
I've been-
councils have you come before?
This is my first council.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that's very telling, because I don't know anybody other than maybe the few of us who really want to wade into the politics of healthcare. But this can't be fun for you. And really, knowing that the NHS is going to come out swinging on your position is something you knew coming into here, I am sure. And I want to highlight something that was in Ms. Sevenpfeiffer's letter. It says she's baffled as she thinks it's regrettable that the focus of discussion is on past physicians who've chosen to leave. I will tell you, council, and everybody listening, I've heard from 11 doctors because I emailed your letter out and asked for opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm astounded by administrators that can stand there and talk to us on how doctors should be treating their patients. So I wouldn't dare to do it. So I emailed it out to all the doctors who have contacted all of us in the since the HIP really became an issue, and got 11 responses. Only one was a past emergency physician. It's their nurses and doctors who are still there that are concerned on the changes that are taking place and the wait loads. And quite frankly, if your 2006 result was that the admit no beds is no problem, until you fix that admit no beds, I don't care how many emerge doctors you put in there, at some point the wait time is going to be backlogged. And just for council's information, my son was in emerge, as you know, last Monday. We went in at 7 o'clock. We got great physician care. But I watch, and I like to see the politics of what's taking place in there. And there were 2 doctors when we went in. But at 10 o'clock, the one doctor left, and that left one emerge physician on the rest of the night. And he worked his behind off. I don't know how he could clear people so quickly. It was phenomenal to watch him. And I thought, wow, there's just one doc on. Whereas we were told they would strive at most cases to have 2 doctors on peak times. That didn't happen. I talked to a number of people in there who said, we really haven't had 2 doctors on after 10 o'clock. Very often, if at any time since the NHS was here speaking to council. So, I mean, I think maybe your letter will be finally a wake-up call to the province, because we've sent resolution after resolution and motion after motion asking them to listen. Maybe your expertise, and I don't care whether the entire OMA sanctions you, your position as chair of emergency medicine for that section says to me that you're the expert on this, not Ms. Sevenpfeiffer and not the NHS board. So thank you very much. Let's hope the Minister of Health actually listens to us this time, or Premier McGuinty, because this is going to go from bad to worse according to the doctors and the nurses who are still in there.
And perhaps members of council, we can include in our motion the direction of this council to be leveled or to be sent to all levels of the administration, from the Premier's office to the Minister of Health, to the LIN and to the NHS as well. So you might entertain that in your motion as well. You can include that, if I can have that included. Would somebody like to second it?
We'll give it to them anyway, so we can.
So, okay, Councillor, would you like to make that motion for me? Moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by Councillor Ioannoni. Is that okay as amendment?
Are
Okay.
you amending my motion?
I'm asking for Councillor Diodati to request that. We can amend your motion. You can make an addition to what would your pleasure be.
I'm assuming you're asking that as a friendly amendment.
You can do that, or you can make a separate motion. So
No,
whatever.
I don't mind it being a friendly
Okay,
amendment.
that's
Thank
good.
you.
So second, actually not required, so that's fine. So a friendly amendment to the motion. Okay. Any other comments from members of council?
Could I interject, Your Worship?
Pardon?
Just on a couple of comments made by Councillor Ioannoni. Did I say?
Yes.
So I think it's also if the expectation is to
required,
have double coverage of physicians 24 hours.
I'm sorry, Doctor. Excuse me, please. Mr. Clerk, did you want to make a comment?
Well, I don't feel it's necessary. We send it to everybody who needs to get the resolution anyways. But when you ask, we have this practice here on these friendly amendments, you ask the mover and the seconder whether they'll agree to it. But it's going to happen anyways, that it's going to get sent to
I'm
every
sorry.
pertinent party.
That's fine, but we can concur. The seconder, would you concur? Okay, that's fine. So we have a motion. Thank you, Doctor. I apologize. Please proceed.
That's right. Just the issue about having double coverage, full-time double coverage, even in the busiest departments in this province, on overnights between the hours of midnight and 8, perhaps between the hours of 2 to 8, there's usually only one physician. So if this community or the NHS is expecting to have 2 physicians on continuously, that's not a realistic expectation.
Okay. Alrighty. So we'll ask the clerk to call the vote, please.
I think everybody's familiar with what the actual motion's requesting, which is the appointment of a provincial supervisor. Councillor Diodati? In favor. Councillor Fisher?
In favor.
Councillor Ioannoni?
Yes.
Councillor Carrio?
Yes.
Councillor Maves?
Forward.
Councillor Peter Angelo?
Aye.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Wing?
In favor.
Mayor Selsey?
4.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We appreciate your presentation here this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Mr. Clerk, would you introduce the next item on the agenda, please?
A public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city's zoning bylaw to recognize existing cabins at Falls Manor, 7104 to 7118 Lundy's Lane, and permit lesser footage for residential lots on Cuviello Court. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, October 30th, 2009, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
At this point, I'm going to ask the Director of Planning to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank
Mr. Hurlowich.
Thank you, Your Worship. This, oops, going too fast. This application involves the Falls Manor restaurant, motel, and cabins that are on the site. The property is located on the south side of Lundy's Lane, west of Brookfield Avenue, and immediately adjacent to the hydropower canal. The other uses in the area include the hydro canal to the north, some commercial properties and residential to the north. To the east of this property are some commercial properties as well as a number of residential. To the south are residential properties, including Cuviello Court. The top 2/3 of the property is designated as tourist commercial in the city's official plan and zoned tourist commercial as well. The bottom third of the site is actually designated residential and zoned R1C in the city's zoning bylaw. The applicant is seeking to recognize 12 existing cabins on that southerly third of the site, as well as seeking to create 2 additional residential lots on the north side of Cuviello Court. The applicant's proposal is on the left side of the screen, and it shows in a yellow color the area that's currently zoned and designated for residential, the southerly third that I mentioned. The Cuviello Court is at the bottom end of that yellow area. So there's a turning circle with 2 lots on that turning circle. The 12 cabins are shown as little squares or boxes along the left half of that site, immediately behind the existing motel. And then the applicant wishes to create 2 new residential lots labeled as Part 1 and Part 2. So that's basically the application to rezone the site specifically for all of the site to be recognized as tourist commercial with special permissions to list cabins as a permitted use, not currently permitted use in the TC zone, and to then recognize at least in the case of one of those lots, an undersized frontage. The planning department, in reviewing this with the applicant's agent, had suggested that the whole planning program was initially to extend Cuviello Court northerly to take advantage of those lands in yellow so that they could be developed fully with residential lots. That would bring the residential properties in line with the backs of residential properties fronting on Brookfield. In this slide, it shows that there could be 4 lots created. In fact, there probably could even be 5 lots if we made the bulb slightly bigger on that cul-de-sac. So that was certainly the planning program that the planning department had been working on when Mr. Cuviello developed Cuviello Court in the first place. In fact, he had wanted to terminate Cuviello Court much shorter than it currently exists, and we had insisted that it extended all the way back so that we could try and achieve this full residential build-out. Basically, we've gone through these 2 slides. The official plan for the area contains policies that non-conforming uses would eventually cease over time. That would then apply to these 12 cabins. The owner at this point does not wish to remove the cabins. The official plan also has policies that relate to non-complying uses, and the cabins are certainly non-complying. When we look at those policies, the council can entertain a zoning bylaw change where the zoning will not permit a change of use or performance standard that will increase the impacts on complying uses, that is, the residential being the complying uses. That would not constitute a danger to the surrounding uses. It will not contribute to any urban renewal problem and would not interfere with the desirability or desirable development on the adjacent lands. In reviewing this proposal for the 12 to recognize the 12 cabins and the 2 residential lots, we don't see that this proposal actually offends those. In fact, it probably satisfies those criteria. The way that we see this, though, is that this cabins would serve as an interim use until such a time as it could develop fully for residential purposes. The zoning on the site, they've requested a tourist commercial zone for the site that's occupied by the restaurant, motel, and cabins. We would need to introduce a definition of cabin into the zoning bylaw. Our recommendation would be that should council approve this application, that the 12 cabins be recognized only on the rear 61 meters or 200 feet and limited to the current number and the current size of those cabins. Over the long term, those cabins really should be phased out and developed with residential lots as I outlined earlier on. We would require the bylaw to include fencing so that residential lots would be screened from the cabin development, and that, again, one of the requests is that one of those lots within that development that the applicant proposes would be undersized for frontages because of the curve of the cul-de-sac. In all likelihood, the lot would meet full frontage requirements back at the building line where the dwelling would be erected. as well, because of that reduced frontage, the bylaw contains provisions with respect to how many or how wide a driveway can be on any residential lot in the city. It requires that 50% of that front yard area be landscaped. We would have to amend those provisions as well to recognize the site-specific instance. As well, if Council goes along with staff's recommendation to extend Cuviello Court northward, there would be a need for a 1-foot reserve along the edge of Cuviello Court so that commercial traffic wouldn't travel through a residential area. That is the cabin traffic. And that in the long run we could actually achieve the full build-out with lots 3 and 4 as residential. The proposed amendment is requested to recognize the existing cabins. The official plan makes allowances for the proposal. The proposal does not provide for the extension of Cuviello Court as we originally intended. Staff is therefore recommending a modified version of the development which would allow over time the full utilization of the residentially designated portion of the site. This concept would not impact on the surrounding residents, and it would allow the cabins to remain on an interim basis. Therefore, we're recommending that Council approve the zoning amendment to recognize the existing cabins, to reduce the lot frontage for one of those lots that would be created on the basis of extending Cuviello Court north to the subject lands, and to provide access for 2 new residential lots. Those are the highlights. I'll just flip back to this slide, which illustrates the difference between what the applicant has applied for on the left and what staff is recommending on the right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. And once again, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 34, subsection 19 of the Planning Act. At this time, Council will hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this matter. Is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this matter? For the third time, is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak? Having seen none, at this time I'm going to call the applicant or his representative forward, please.
Thank you, Mayor Selsey. May I hand out a little bit of material to the councillors?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Just for the record, if you want to just identify yourself, if you would, please.
My name is Rick Brady. I'm a planner. I am here on behalf of the owners of Falls Manor. My clients are here this evening, Mr. and Mrs. Spalletta. My clients have owned the Falls Manor for 7 years. I would suggest to you that most of you know where this restaurant is. In many respects, this is the breakfast place in Niagara Falls. And I know I've met some of you having breakfast there from time to time. My client's business is that of both a restaurant and accommodation. And if you look at the site plan that's both on the wall and in front of you, you'll see that there is the restaurant at the front, a motel that L's along the flankage of the property, and then the 12 cabins that are in existence to the south. Those cabins have been there for a very long period of time. I suggest to you from at least the 1940s, and so therefore they are clearly a legal non-conforming use, and there is absolutely no reason for why my client would put in a zoning bylaw amendment to recognize those cabins, because they simply exist and they're there as part of a legal use. So the zoning bylaw amendment before you tonight is not to recognize those cabins. It effectively does, but that's not the reason that the bylaw has been put forward, and I'd like to explain that to you. If you look at the first schedule in my package, which shows the current zoning, it's the same as is on the plan that Mr. Hurlovich has put up there. The back third of the property is shown as residential. What my client wants to do with that property, which is residential, is he would like to sever two lots, Part 1 and Part 2, which are shown. Those two lots would be created on residentially zoned land, and they would be created onto a frontage of an existing court, which is Cuviello Court. And when we first spoke to the planning staff about doing just that, simply creating those by severance, the issue that was raised was that, well, that's fair, Rick, but then there's the rest of the land which is zoned residential, and there will be no way of ever being able to develop it for residential purposes. So, if you will, the cabins and the little bit of land that's in behind Part 1 and Part 2. And so I talked to planning staff and I said, that's fair. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the plan that is approved deals with those lands in a satisfactory fashion. That's correct. And so it's under those circumstances that the zoning bylaw amendment was put forward. The zoning bylaw amendment was put forward for the lands not including Part 1 and Part 2 as identified on both my schedule and on the schedule there, but for the L of lands that surround it, so that those lands would be tourist commercial and they would be non-complying, as Mr. Hurlovich has described to you, and my client would therefore move forward with a severance for Part 1 and Part 2. That's what the plan was. And my client would like me to make it very clear to you that he has no interest, short-term, medium-term, or long-term, in removing the cabins on his property. They work very well, they function quite nicely, and he continues to find them as an affordable way for people to deal with tourism in the city of Niagara Falls. He has no issues with the idea of a landscape strip on the south side of the property and all the other issues that were raised in the planning staff report, but he takes significant issue with the notion that someday that will be something other than what he has it to be. And he doesn't believe it will be the case and would like to set forth in a process that allows him to use Part 1 and Part 2 as residential lots, but also allows him to continue to use his lands for the purposes that they've been used for a very long period of time, dating from at least the 1940s. So we had a lengthy discussion on that, and we put forth a proposal which is shown on the second to you, and it shows all of the lands which are in a yellow hasher as being tourist commercial, which leaves Part 1 and Part 2 as residential. It allows, when a severance application is brought forward, to say that the lands that are Part 1 and Part 2 will be severed. They meet the residential zone requirements with some small exceptions, which Mr. Hurlovich has talked about, and they could be dealt with in the bylaw, and they would front on the Cuviello Court. Cuviello Court would not be extended. It would remain where it is, and it would be placed as such. What planning staff have suggested, if you turn to the next page, and it's the same as is on the overhead in front of you, is that the lands, that Cuviello Court be extended, and that the lands, which I've now shown in a red hasher on here, would be zoned tourist commercial. Now let's think of that for a moment. These lands currently are legal non-conforming uses. The zoning bylaw would recognize the legal non-conforming uses as tourist commercial, but we would extend a court so that they would eventually be residential. So therefore, we would have to come back before you at some point in time in the future, if this was approved, with an additional zoning bylaw amendment to convert these lands, which are before you today to be tourist commercial to be replaced as residential, which they are today. My client sees no benefit in this at all. He sees this as a bit of a paper chase, to be quite honest, and would really like what he had applied for, because in his belief, he currently has some residential land which fronts onto a municipal street, which he would like to use for residential purposes. And he currently has a non-conforming use, which he would like to continue to use as a non-conforming use. Now, we have no issue, and certainly that's the reason that the zoning bylaw amendment has been put forth, to zone those lands for the site-specific use, which is the cabins. So, pulling that all together, what I would like you to do, if you see through my logic, is on the last page of my handout to you, there's a revised recommendation. This is very much similar to the one that was put forth by planning staff in their report, but it's now referring to Schedule 2 as opposed to Schedule 3. And what it says is that Council approved the zoning bylaw amendment to recognize the existing cabins and reduce the lot frontage requirements for residential lots to 6 meters, 19.7 feet, to provide access to 2 new residential lots as illustrated in Schedule 2. What that does is it puts in place what my client asked for when he applied for the zoning bylaw amendment for these lands. And then it would allow us to move forward, subject to approval, that we would then apply for Part 1 and Part 2 as a severance. They would meet the requirements, because the requirements are now as identified, and then we could have the 2 residential lots being created on land which is currently zoned residential and currently fronts on a municipal road. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hurlovich, do you wish to make any comment with regard to Mr. Brady's proposition? Does that change anything at all?
No, he made this point very clearly, I think.
Okay. And Mr. Brady, I guess we could ask the question, how are the cabins serviced at this point, and from what direction? Do you know that information at all?
They're on full municipal services, and they're serviced from Lundy's Lane.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions from members of council? If not, then this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded, and the pleasure of council. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I see no problem with the suggestion and the recommended revised motion that Mr. Brady has indicated. I find it puzzling how you're going to have tourist commercial directly beside a residential lot, but I see nobody in objection, and the owners of the property would have to deal with the sale of that property and dealing with it. So I would move the motion that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment to recognize the existing cabins, to reduce the lot frontage requirements in the residential lot to 6 meters, to provide access to the new residential lots as illustrated on the Schedule 2.
We have a second to the motion, Councillor Iannone. Any further discussion or comment? Having seen none, all those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Brady. Yes. Okay. Move on to the next miscellaneous planning matters. Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, the first miscellaneous planning item is designation of the Earl A. Thomas House at 6320 Pine Grove Avenue. This isn't a public meeting per se under the Planning Act, but we would ask that you canvass the gallery to see if anyone's interested. It looks like probably not. Just a little bit of background: on December the 5th, 2008, Council passed gave the notice of intent to designate the property. Actually, that took place in November 2008, and the ad went out on December the the 5th 08. There was an appeal to the intent to designate, and there was a Conservation Review Board hearing on October 5th, 2009. The report and recommendations reflect the outcome of that Conservation Review Board hearing. There has been some correspondence from the mortgage holder regarding the designation that Council has, and it's staff's recommendation to obviously proceed with the designation. One item, the proposed bylaw is part of the Council report, but unfortunately wasn't reproduced in the bylaws section. So if Council's okay with the designation, that bylaw would then take on bylaw number 2009-191.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I'm going to ask if there's anyone present who wishes to speak to this matter with regard to the designation of the Earl A. Thomas House at 6320 Pine Grove Avenue here this evening. No one in the gallery appears to be here on this matter, so again, the pleasure of council. Can I have a motion to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Wing, seconded by Councillor Iannone. Any further discussion or comment? Yes, Councillor Maves.
Yes, I'd just like to know, possibly, maybe it's through you to Mr. Hurlovich, has anyone been inside the property and seen the general condition?
Mr. Hurlovich?
No one on our staff has been in because the property is in this limbo in terms of receivership. So in fact, Mr. Ogilvy, at the time that he applied for rezoning, didn't even have access and couldn't provide us access to the building.
No, I'm just concerned that we're going to designate something and might not even be worth saving. And I'm not sure. I'd like to see some more reports on this particular building, because I think it puts an awful onus on a potential buyer or any owner if it's not salvageable. I mean, we've been looking at some fences and some other things, but I think sometimes some things aren't worth fixing up, and I'd rather see us go to a report that says the general condition and see whether it's really worth this.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor, Councillor, but Councillor Wing?
I'd just like to note that the Leeming House on Highland Avenue, which is in absolutely deplorable condition right now because it was plundered by its most recent owner, has sold. And, you know, that if you'd read the report thoroughly, there are so many very significant reasons to recognize and celebrate the Earl Thomas House. And I have not heard that it's in bad condition at all. We have designated buildings in the city which are in far, far worse condition. Another one is the old police building on Zimmerman. And fortunately, an owner has at long last come along who's going to put a roof on that structure and begin to put money into turning it around. And you know, those of us who appreciate the built heritage of this community don't hesitate to put our money into it. And I have not heard that this one is in bad condition at all.
Thank you. Councillor Diodati.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm not sure if the clerk addressed the letter from Recharge.
Yes, he did.
So specifically, were you able to answer their questions that they specifically asked?
Just drew it to our attention that we have it in our package. If you have a question, please feel free.
They have in paragraph 2. They ask the question: if this is because this bylaw includes all 4 lots, they're suggesting it need only cover 2. If it's passed as it's presented, then 1 could be left in the position of having lots 132 and 135 sold with designation. Then the question is, the statement is they would then be owned by different individuals. The question is, what would the meaning of the designation on these vacant lots mean? Could a new owner apply for a building permit for a new home with a design which is sympathetic to a heritage designation? So they're claiming some
the person who's, if I might answer that question first, the person who's asking these questions, he doesn't reveal that here, but he's a lawyer, and he knows the answers to these questions, or he should. He shouldn't be asking us for legal advice on what you can and can't do with properties. That's my first comment. I've dealt with Mr. Wilkins for many years. He and I are old adversaries. And I might say I like Bob, but he doesn't think the way municipalities do. The other thing I think is important, this is copied to Mr. William Walker. You'll notice a copy there from Gowlings. Mr. Walker is the lawyer for the mortgagee. They've been thoroughly aware of this whole process. They could well have come to the hearing if they wanted to make any presentations that they thought would actually succeed. They didn't do that, and I think that might reveal how good they thought these arguments are. The other thing that the chair and Mr. Hurlovich will concur. The chair was very firm that she wanted us to designate the whole property because the trees on the property are considered part of the significance of a complementary feature, if you will, to the heritage building. And so she was quite, as I say, firm. She was a very firm lady all around, but she was quite firm on that particular point, that these major trees needed to be preserved. And she was well aware they were on a different lot. And she wanted us to designate the whole property as it stood. She was saying to us, Niagara Falls, you have presented the whole property as it stood, and that's what I want to see preserved. That's what you're going to designate. And that was her specific instruction on this matter, so that's the answer. And if Mr. Wilkins had bothered to go to the hearing, he'd have heard that.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure if we're talking about the physical attributes of the hearing chair or the... Anyway, thank you.
Oh, we were talking about the tone of her voice, sir.
Thank you.
Very firm.
Councillor, does that answer your question? Councillor Diodati?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Maves?
No, my other concern is the fact we're looking at 5 lots here, and earlier this evening we're talking about affordable housing, and I know there's apartment buildings on that street and in that area, and perhaps I'm saying if this building is in bad condition, the lots could probably be better suited to some other form of building on it. That's my only... I'd rather see take us a little time with this and make sure we do it properly, because as I say, I don't like to see something designated that can't be changed or renovated to just to save an old building. I grew up in the neighborhood. I delivered groceries to that house. I know the house, and certainly I'd like to see it preserved as well. But here again, I'm looking at, we talk about affordable housing and different things. We can't designate every building in the city. I grew up in a house in the still standing that had still got the square nails in the beams in the basement, and it's not designated, and I just can't see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hurlbut, you wish to address Councillor Maves' concern?
Your Worship, just for the benefit of council, this council actually dealt with, to my knowledge, 2 other properties in the past where land greater than the area that the house sits on has been included in the designating bylaw. At the time that they had a proposal to divide portions of those lots, they brought that through the Municipal Heritage Committee. The Municipal Heritage Committee had a chance to review it, and whether or not there was any impact on the heritage value of that, made a recommendation back to this council, and in both situations additional lots were severed from those once it was fully reviewed through the process that's in the Heritage Act. And so there would be a recourse should a future owner acquire all 5 lots with the existing house for them to go through the Heritage Act and remove the designation. The onus is on them to demonstrate that, but it has been done in the past. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maves, does that answer your question?
So you're saying you can remove a designation down the road if need be?
Mr. Hurlbut?
It's happened twice before. One is actually the Oswald House. A lot was severed off the north end of that after a portion of the lot was de-designated. The other house is a house that's owned by Ron Brown on St. Patrick, and there were 2 lots severed there. I believe the old Patties bought one of those lots.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Maves?
Well, here again, I'm just wondering if there's some way we can get some indication of the condition inside or something so we can take a look at it. I just think we'd need a little more time to take a look at the building, that's all.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor. If it's defeated, you can bring that forward if you like at this point. But, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, well, I don't think the condition of the interior of the house, if it's a heritage property, obviously if somebody wants to acquire it or has it, they have the ability to make the renovations, and they have to do it according to proper standards with respect to heritage. Referring to Mr. Ogilvy's letter, are we dealing tonight with Mr. Hurlovich's suspension under any period of time, an investigation into his conduct? Are we dealing with that tonight at all?
I'm not certain as to what you're referring to, Councillor.
It's a letter that Mr. Ogilvy sent.
Oh, I see. Well, they were dealing with Mr. Wilkins' letter, but I didn't see Mr. Ogilvy's subsequent correspondence. So, members of council, any further questions? Having seen none, we'll call the vote on the current motion. Would you like the motion read? Or, the motion is to move on the recommendation, to move the recommendation forward. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2 opposed. Thank you. The motion is carried. Move on to the next item. As you see, there has been a request in our correspondence and our council handouts to defer this matter. So, well, it's already taken care of. It's been removed. I think we're okay. Okay, then fine. Councillor, if you go ahead, that's fine, please. Councillor Diodati, moved by Councillor, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Motion's deferred. Thank you. Matter's deferred.
Opposed.
I'm sorry. Opposed? I'm sorry. You have 2 opposed? Okay. Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Just one other item related to that. In your handouts, you have the actual correspondence from the BIA from Ms. Tony Williams, where she's asking for the deferral on that item. She's also asking that the Downtown Steering Committee have a meeting. Now, traditionally, we would do that on before our next council meetings, which are December the 14th, but they're requesting a meeting earlier than that. So with the committee's blessing, I guess, we could set up a meeting for a week from tonight. Obviously, it wouldn't be a council day, so I'm just asking the 4 committee members whether they have an interest in that. They want to have a meeting on December 7th. Your next council meeting is December 14th. You tell us what you want to do.
Well, we are gathering that evening for a budget. No, you're not? Okay, we canceled that. So the pleasure of Councillor Diodati.
I'm sorry, I missed. Why can't we do it on the 14th before the meeting?
Because they want you to do it before the 14th.
So we have no meeting on the 7th as we had talked about initially before, and that's not going to be then until the next council meeting on the 14th.
No, Your Worship, I would make the motion that we do it on the 14th.
Okay, moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by. Hold on the 14th. Seconded by, please, Councillor Carrio. Any discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to item number 3, the downtown Queen Street Infrastructure Revitalization Project Phased Implementation Plan. We do have the report as submitted. Mr. Holman is here to address any issues if council has any questions. Pleasure of council. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Mr. Holman. Is this what we discussed at the last committee meeting of the downtown, the changes in the infrastructure that we all thought was done in 1980 that you have to carry on now?
Mr. Holman?
That's correct.
Can I have a mover?
I would move the motion.
Yes, thank you. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Fisher. Once again, you've heard the comments, the motion, I should say. Any comments or questions? Having seen, you have comments, Councillor Fisher?
Because the public have a lot of questions, I would like Mr. Holman just to explain to the public why we are doing this.
Mr. Holman?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. The downtown streetscaping project is going to involve extensive work to the sidewalks, street lighting, and furniture. And before we make that investment, we've had a look at the condition of the infrastructure underground. The water mains are in fairly good shape, but the sanitary sewer has been around for, according to our records, over 100 years. And we are concerned that before we make any investments on the above-ground features of the downtown core, it's important that the sewer system works properly. So that's the key focus, is to divide the project up into 2 separate phases. We'll be able to deal with the underground work this winter, weather permitting, and then come back in a separate contract and deal with the above-ground features.
Thank you. The same as Councillor Thompson said, many people believe that when the work was done downtown 20 years ago, all that had been completed. And obviously, the sewer system, the separation, had not been completed. And we are mandated to separate. And so that has to be done. We've done Park Street, we've done many of the other streets. This is the one street that we have to do. So please don't feel that we're doing something specifically for downtown. It's something this city has to do, and we're mandated to do it. Thank you.
Councillor Fisher, I'm glad you brought that up. We do have a sewer, I think, dated from 1893 or 1890, thereabouts. Is that correct, Mr. Holman? Yeah, so that's something we'll have.
Is it oak?
Yeah.
Many people don't understand that.
Yes. We're looking, actually, I was asking, I asked that question by the press, and if there is a sample of oak, it'd be nice to get it so they can take a shot of that, Mr. Holman. So are you aware, is it cast or is it oak, do we know? Or brick? Could it be brick?
Well, our records aren't perfect, but on the samples that we've seen so far, they're probably some type of clay pipe. But if we can salvage something, we can. We'll bring back some information for council.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. So, remember we better call the vote, I think, members of council. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Move on with some comments, if I may. I'd like to begin my comments this evening by offering our condolences to the family of Lydia Pica from our clerk's office on the passing of her father-in-law, Mr. Vito Pica. Mr. Pica was a retired employee of the City of Niagara Falls, and we also extend our sincere sympathies to the family of retired employee Frank Farrow on his recent passing. I'd also like to extend congratulations to the staff of our Parks, Recreation, Culture Department and all the volunteers, both from the City Hall and our extended associate organizations, for a wonderful Santa Claus parade this past Saturday that entertained thousands of our residents. We're also very pleased to have the attendance of the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Game mascots, being Miga, Kwachi, and Sumi, and our official community torchbearer, Mr. Gord Singleton, as part of the parade. Many local entries as well as out-of-town bands and floats made up this year's parade, and a great event was held. I'd also like to remind everyone that the Olympic Torch Run is just 3 weeks away, and I encourage everyone to show their civic and Canadian pride on the night of December 20th by being a part of the very unique celebration. The Vancouver 2010 Olympic Torch Relay represents an incredible opportunity to gather as a community with all Canadians to express tremendous pride in our country. We're looking for groups and individuals to come out and cheer on our torchbearers. And please invite everyone you know to come and to participate and cheer on the Olympic torch as it passes through Niagara Falls on Sunday, December 20th, beginning at 6 p.m. There'll be more information with regard to the route of the runners as it passes through the city in the press supplied in a few days before the event takes place. Again, and full information is available on our city homepage, or you can contact the mayor's office to learn more about opportunities to help cheer on the Olympic torch and, of course, attend the celebration in Queen Victoria Park. I'd like to remind everyone again, as we heard last week from Councillor Diodati, that our Toys for Tickets program is being offered by our Traffic and Parking Department. Parking tickets issued between November 9th and December 4th are eligible to be paid through this program. The value of the gift, as you know, must be equal or greater than the amount of your ticket. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone that on December 12th, we will have another great downtown event. The Candlelight Stroll will take place from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and will feature many local choirs, a live nativity scene, storytellers, Christmas vignettes, and so much more. We hope to have another great response for this downtown event, and that concludes my comments for this evening. Move on to communications and comments from the city clerk. First item being Mr. Dave Weissall International Fireworks display for the Olympic Winter Torch Relay being held on December 20, 2009 for the consideration of council. Moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Peter Angelo. Once again, you've heard the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional items for council's consideration? Okay. Can I call on ratification of Community Services Committee actions? I'm going to call on Councillor Iannone as the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the minutes of the November 16th, 2009 meeting be adopted as recorded. Under reports, MW 2009-75, Charnwood Drainage Ditch Improvements, that the Council approve the proposed improvements to the drainage ditch located on city-owned property, and that funding in the amount of $15,000 be approved from the 2010 Municipal Works operating budget for this project. Under PD 2009-93, an improvement grant application for commercial building and facade for 4738 to 4740 Valley Way, that the commercial building and facade improvement grant application for 4738 to 4740 Valley Way be approved, subject to the owner satisfying the program requirements, that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the grant agreement. Under PD 2009-94, commercial building and facade improvement grant application for historic Niagara Queen Street 3 properties, that council approve the applications for the commercial building and facade improvement subject to historic Niagara meeting the downtown CIP program requirements. Under PD 2009-97, Bill 198, an act to amend the Planning Act with respect to inclusionary zoning. One, that staff continue to monitor the private member Bill 198 and report back to council. And two, that staff request input from area developers and builders on Bill 198. Under TS 2009-51, Niagara Regional Intermunicipal Transit Initiative. One, that the materials presented to the region's Transportation Strategy Steering Committee, TSSC, regarding the intermunicipal transit work plan be received. That Niagara Falls needs to focus on initiatives such as the People Mover and its conventional transit service business plan as priorities for the municipality, and that Niagara Falls supports the triangle service approach involving Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines, provided it is not funded municipally or regionally. And under new business, that staff investigate the use of council chambers for the committee meetings. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Once again, council has heard the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. I'd like to call for ratification of Corporate Services Committee actions. I'm going to call on the Chair, Councillor Peter Angelo.
Thank you, Worship. Following items that will be ratified from tonight's meeting. First, that the minutes of November 16th meeting be adopted as recorded. Under reports, we had IS 2009-02 dealing with the phone system voice over IP upgrade at the service center. It's recommended that the quotations for the purchase of a voice over IP phone system be awarded to telecommunications company in the amount of $30,000, $585.91, and that staff be authorized to sign the necessary purchase order and related documents associated with these purchases. Next item, F 2009-50, dealing with the 2008 municipal performance measures. It was recommended that the report be received for the information of council, and also that staff post the information on the city's website. The next report was F 2009-58, dealing with the third quarter review for capital budget report. It was recommended that the report be received for the information of council. The last report was FS 2009-10, dealing with the Fire Communications Dispatch Center renovations and infrastructure requirements. And it was recommended that council approve the expenditure of up to $500,000 for the replacement of the Fire Communications Dispatch Center and the infrastructure work required for the implementation of the radio system. Also, that council authorize the use of sole source proponents, if appropriate, in accordance with present corporate policy. And lastly, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all related agreements. And I would so move the minutes, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Once again, council heard the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. I'd like to call on the clerk for ratification of in-camera recommendations.
A couple of items, Your Worship, that the 2009 non-union salary grid be adjusted to maintain the market medium with no salary adjustment. And regarding the out-of-town bus terminal lease, that lease extension until December 31st, 2009 with the current service provider for the operation of the out-of-town bus terminal be approved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreement.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Any comments or questions? Councillor Thompson?
Yes, I would imagine the same vote that was held in committee would also be documented on the minutes. Is that accurate, Mr. Clerk?
I'm not really sure what you're referring to.
We had a vote in committee. Does that automatically come?
No, you have to make
Okay.
that whatever. Your vote doesn't get transferred, even whether it's community services, corporate services. You have to, if you're opposed, for example, you have to make that declaration upstairs.
Okay. Through the chair of the CIO, I expect that this will come back in a appropriate report to council outlining the protocol that would be utilized for evaluation, and also I guess the other matter was deferred until you come back with an appropriate report with respect to the
yes.
Carryover of vacation.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Both those items will be coming back, two separate reports, but we didn't include all of that in the motion, but they certainly will be coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Having seen none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? You have two conflicts, right? Correct? That's so noted? Okay,
But
thank
you're
you.
in favor of the other items.
Okay, thank you. All righty, move on to the consent agenda. Pleasure of council. Moved by Councillor Carrier, seconded by Councillor Maves. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Move on to bylaws. Mr. Clerk, do you want to just explain the amended bylaw going to the back again, 2009?
Yes, Your Worship. There is the one additional bylaw related to the designation of the Earl A. Thomas House at 6320 Pine Grove, so that'll be bylaw 2009-191, and the confirmatory bylaw will be 2009-192.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion to introduce the bylaws. Bylaws be given a first reading. Moved by Councillor Peter Angel, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Once the council has heard the motion, any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2009-182 to 2009-192 read a first time.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to give the bylaws a second and third reading? Moved by Councillor Peter Angel, once again, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Council has heard the comments or the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried.
Bylaws 2009-182 to 2009-192 read a second and third time and passed.
New business this evening? Yes, Councillor Diodati.
Your Worship, no, I just had a question, actually, and I'm not sure for Councillor Carrier regarding the Parks Commission. I'm not sure what he can answer, what he can't answer, but I had someone ask me a question. I didn't know the answer to it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
We're okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Anyway, the question, well, the one question, I've been asked a couple of questions with all that's been going on regarding the Maid of the Mist. And again, I'm not sure what Councillor Carrier was allowed to talk about or not talk about. But the question that's been asked to me is, does the Parks Commission own the name Maid of the Mist? Or is that owned by a separate entity? Is it a leasing arrangement? Are you able to tell us who actually owns the name? Thank you, Your Worship.
That's a question to Councillor Carrier. Whether you can answer it or not, it's a question to Councillor.
Can we talk about the torch run? I'm assuming it's owned by the Maid of the Mist. I'm assuming it's owned by the Maid of the Mist Steamboat Company. I'm assuming.
Okay. All righty. Okay, any further questions, Councillor? No? Is that?
Yeah, well, if I could, okay. All right. The question maybe you can answer, you can't answer it. And again, I don't know. And the question is, Your Worship, because how this may affect Niagara Falls, that a tourist operator asked me, if it happens, if it just so happens after this tender process and everything goes through, if it turns out someone other than the current operators of the Maid of the Mist are the ones that are awarded the contract, could because there's an American aspect to the boat, there's a ramp on the American side, could they continue to operate on the American side and compete with the Canadian side? And I'm just wondering, I'm sure you guys have looked at that, but is that a possibility of what could end up happening?
Councillor Carrier?
That's a tough one. I don't think that I can answer the question. I've had the same questions asked to me by different peers, different tourist operators, and that's a concern among the operators in Niagara Falls because this is all up in the air. I don't know, maybe we could ask the question to someone that could come and answer it for us, or maybe we could get someone here to come and talk to us because there are concerns in the community or in the tourist community about what could happen if they just operated on the American side, not on the Canadian side. I don't really know the answer to the question, but it's a good question. Maybe we could, if you left it with me, maybe I'd get someone to come here and answer the question.
Okay. Councillor? Councillor?
I don't know if anyone can speak. I would invite Councillor Carrier to bring someone to council if they want to answer those questions.
Okay. That answer your question? Okay, any other new business this evening? Councillor Peter Angel.
Thanks, Your Worship. At our last Park in the City Committee meeting, the committee recommended that we place on the Aviva website the parks of Niagara Falls. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to enhance the recycling program. So what I wanted a motion of council that we place the Aviva logo on our website so that people can click on our website, get into the Aviva's website so that they can vote for our submission, which would help us to do more recycling in our parks. So I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Any further comments or questions? Did everybody understand the question? No. You know? Okay. Could you explain that a little further, please, Councillor?
Sure. And I think that actually it was Councillor Maves that first brought to people's attention the Aviva website, but It's a website that hosts contests, and they offer money to the winners of their contests, and the contests are based on votes from people that are online. So we've entered the Parks for the City of Niagara Falls, and what we want to do is we want to enhance the recycling program by putting bins in the parks. And if we're successful, then Aviva will end up paying for those bins. So what we're asking people to do is we're asking people to go onto the Aviva website and vote for our submission, which is the City of Niagara Falls Recycling and Parks. And if we're the one that garners the most votes, then they'll pay for our submission. AVIVA. AVIVA.
Okay. Ready? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Peter Ansel.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Back in, I believe, mid-November, the second phase of the steps down to the Glen was completed by the Trails and Bikeway Committee. And I know I received a letter, and there's some pictures of before and after. And I just thought it would be appropriate, Your Worship, to perhaps have the Chair, Lisa Wilson, of the Trails and Bikeway Committee here, and give her congratulations and all their volunteers as well.
Be glad to invite the chair. So if you'd like to make that a motion. Moved by Councillor Peter Ansel, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Councillor Carrion.
Your Worship, just to give the Festival of Lights some credit, I happened to drive through the park on the weekend. The Festival of Lights new rink at the brink is up and running. It looks like an absolute fabulous new attraction, and certainly would like to give the Festival of Lights people a lot of credit for the hard work that they did to get that up and running, and hopefully the public will get down and get a chance to use it and try it. It's absolutely spectacular, and I hope it's successful, and I hope the people in the area embrace it and get down there and have a look at it. And there is some free parking available at certain times, so that the residents can go down and take advantage of free parking and try the new rink at the brink. And again, congratulations to the Festival of Lights people. They did a fabulous job.
Well noted. I'm glad you brought that forward. And we'll be looking forward to the opening coming up shortly as well, so that's great. Any new business? Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.